No,
Hawthorn Essendon. All right, let's kick it
Hawthorn
off.
Essendon, mate. Hawthorn Essendon. So this was a cracking game for 1.5 quarters. And then the Bombers just absolutely took control from there. From the Hawthorn point of view, everything's going through Sicily in the back line. I was watching them kick the ball 50 metres across field just to put it in Sicily's hands. So definitely a viable option. The only issue there was Sicily, more than what we saw last year, he was trying to keep his temper under wraps. And I was surprised as a captain that he was starting to get a bit fired up and losing it, where last year they were a lot more competitive. This year he's going to be on the ending of some hiding. So Hawthorn are just definitely no good at all. So how Sicily controls his temper is going to be very interesting. But he's going to see so much ball, like 15 marks on the weekend. It was unreal. Chris?
So I've seen a slight role change from Sicily, which I think is pretty important considering everybody has him. And you are right in that I think that he's going to be a good option, but he's not on kick-ins anymore. He
No,
only
he's
had
not.
one kick in for the game, but he is the guy that they target from the kick-ins. He was standing very, very wide in the
Exactly.
arc of the 50. And so what they're trying to do is get the ball in motion and then use Sicily to, okay, so where do we go from here? We're going to try to get that little 45 to go in the corridor. Are we going to switch back across to the other side? Are we going to go long down the line? We're going to let Sicily make that decision out here. And the way that the zones are used is that they're obviously condensed in the 50 because they need to be outside. And he's just sitting just shallow of the 50 just for that little chip right there. And he was there every single time. And that's why he got 15 marks because he was just that
Mm-hmm.
easy outlet in defense from the kick ins.
Yep.
But I worry about losing kick ins from his repertoire because obviously we don't want that. He only had one. So from the
I don't
10,
mind if they're looking for him every time. Like
yeah, but I think teams will
that's
cotton on to that. I
well,
think
yeah,
eventually
but
teams go,
but
well, no, we're not
I
going to
don't
let
think
that happen
anyone,
anymore.
but I don't think they care because what was happening, he's standing in that forward pocket, like that back pocket, and it's a harder kick to get out of defense. Like teams don't want the player running 15 meters, kicking it 50 meters down the line and finding a target down there, and then the team is off. And that's what Essendon were doing much better with their transition. Where Hawthorn, it was, I'm taking the little kick out and putting it in the back pocket, and then the entire Essendon team could just swarm across because you know where the next ball's going. It's going down the line. Or it's the little kick to transition back to the back, to the goal square. So teams are happy to gift that little kick, and they were looking for Sicily every time in that back pocket. So I don't think
Yeah.
it's a bad thing from a super coach point of view, but from a footy point of view, it puts Hawthorn in a lot of trouble. But they're just going to have to do it because they don't even have the tall options down the line really for the Hawks. So they've got to kind of chip and charge and kind of maneuver, the players up the ground. So, and I think that's like what, I keep saying it. I hate the quarterback, role kind of thing, but that's just Sicily right now.
Yeah, it was
All right,
interesting
moving on.
anyway.
And that young Mackenzie was brilliant through the midfield.
Yes.
So
Just
him
clean
with
use.
clean use and that. And they were happy to put the ball in his hands. Yeah, he kicked the ball beautifully. He laid a few tackles there. Just looked natural at that level. So definitely a good one for the Hawks going forward, and definitely somebody who we can consider for our field. And that I've got him at M9 at the moment, but I'd like the flexibility of maybe swapping him around, even potentially with Ashcroft with a couple of these Brisbane games. But yeah, I prefer the little bit of depth there, but he's definitely somebody who we can consider on field. Yeah,
Um,
beautiful user.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, 50% CBAs. I mean, that's what you want. He had 52 in the day. I think that's the role that he played against the Pies. I think he had 61% against the Pies. And we couldn't see him getting all the way up there, but yeah, 52%. If that continues, that's fantastic. And I think it does. There's a few notes from their CBA. So Worpel seemed to be their preferred CBA guy, which
Mm-hmm.
is a massive green light. Um, and his score and performance were really good. I was actually super impressed as a self-confessed Warple hater. What he's learnt to be able to do is just play to his strengths, and instead of trying to use the ball, laterally or try and chip the ball around or anything like that, anytime he had the ball, long to a contest was what he wanted to do, and that's great for Supercoach scoring because if it goes 40 meters to a 50-50, then it's going to be an effective kick anyway. And he didn't actually have a single clanger for the day, which was really, really impressive. Where are you on Worpel, mate? Like, do you think that
No,
you've got to try and squeeze him
he
in?
looked like a slightly poor man's Tom Mitchell, but he played Tom Mitchell's role completely. A couple of times my mate turned to me and goes, It's like I'm watching Tom Mitchell out there," because
Yeah.
he was the one, like, extractor getting the ball out of that, and it wasn't just handballs from him. Like, he was actually bang on the boot, and putting it inside 50. So, yeah, very impressive game for somebody who I haven't really liked his footy over for the last couple of years. And the great thing with the free hit, like, I'm not going with him yet, but he is seriously one to watch this week. They're they're playing a better opposition. They're playing Sydney. So, you can't get much a better contested team there. So we
But
get to
I
see
think that
what
that could
Warble
work into
does.
his favor as
He
well.
could do a favour too, but we get to actually see Warple up against some of the big body Sydney midfielders. And he is seriously one that if, for example, Laird was to stink it up, like we're talking about the mid-price strategy. If Laird
Yeah.
went, 70, 80, whatever, and Warple comes out and does another 100, well, it's 400. You make 400K on that, and that could be the difference where it's Jones or someone like that up to
Yeah.
Sicily or Dacos or anything like that. If you wanted to do a restructure of your team there, so it's definitely a great person to watch because it's got the role for sure.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if he goes there and goes 100 again, he's actually a must-have. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
don't think
becomes
you
that.
can run without him.
Yeah.
I've actually got
Warple.
him.
So if it's not
Yeah,
him,
Worpel.
and the other one's not like maybe it's not lead, but it's Hopper. So he's the other one on notice for a lot of teams. And again, you get the free hit with Hopper this week. So I don't think you go early on this. But yeah,
The
you get to
problem
see
is
what
with
Hopper
waiting a
does.
week is like how many you got to look at your team and go, well, who else do I need? Like,
Yeah,
because I
well,
mean,
it's
I already
not.
don't have McKenna. I
Yeah,
already don't have. Yeah, I don't have Warple. I don't have like any like sideways premiums or anything like that. I don't have Dacos. Like, who are you going to need in your
but you
team
can't fit
to be
them
able to make it?
all in as well. Like I'm looking at my team going, yeah, sure, I'd love these guys, but it's the same as we talked preseason. Outside of Cunnington, Laird, and Jones, everybody else performed this week for me. And that it was just really more my captaincy
Yeah,
option,
I know some
which
people
put
have
me
that
90
issue. I
points
don't.
behind you. But yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at the rest of my team
Some
go,
people have issues.
yeah, other
Some people
people,
have
it's
issues.
if you've got, but that's the thing. If you've got more Stewart or a couple of these other injury ones or Kelly and that there, I think you're looking more at those guys, especially the guys who like got long term injuries. But these guys where like Hopper versus Warple, there's no like, yeah, we expect Warple to come out and you think he'd do it again, but until we actually see it, like a couple of games of data on that, well, who's to say he comes up against Sydney and it's more Newcomb this week and Worpel goes back to 70 and butchers the ball because he's under more pressure than what, say, the Bombers, the Bombers midfield outside of, Setter Goat coming in, don't usually pressure the midfielders that much. It's not their strength. So does that affect Worpel's score? And then Adelaide, we saw how easy Tom Green and Cornelio ran through the Adelaide midfield. Hopper's now playing against that. So if you went early on that this week and then they reverse and Hopper scores 100 this week and Warple scores 70, you're not reversing back the next week. So that's why I think these sort of players, we get the free hit and watch.
Yeah. That's why you go early on some of these rookies. And
Yeah, that's
Hopper
probably
to
the
Warple just
most more
feels
sense.
so dirty to me. Just feels dirty to me. Warple
With only a
in
one
for
week
Hopper
one
is
week thing.
dirty.
If it happens 2 weeks in a row and Warple comes out and gets 100 this week and Hopper goes 65 again, then it makes more sense because you go 2 weeks of data. Okay, this and against a couple of different teams, we can make a better judgment.
I know.
Well,
We
I
we
think that we've
agree
already got the
on that.
data we need. Like Warple's, the number one CBA midfield in that group. He's
He
performed.
is.
He's had 2 games of almost 100.
I'm going Hopper
Like,
over Warple.
I
Sorry.
don't.
Well,
Yeah.
as in,
Okay.
Warple will make you 100 to 150,000. I don't think for the trade that Hopper's going
Well,
to earn
Hopper.
me 100,000 less. So
Yeah,
I'll
like to
take
me,
the
it's
one more
just
game on
I'm
to
him.
more.
me,
I'm
it's about
about
the scoring.
points. I don't care about the money. I care about the points. I want the points. I think if
Well,
he's going to
good.
go
At
90
the
to
point.
100, I can't see Hopper doing that. I can't see Hopper going 80, well, more
Yeah.
than 80 to 85.
Well,
Well,
we'll talk about
I
him
would have
next week
said
because
otherwise
I'm definitely
anyway.
waiting.
Fair enough.
The only other thing I'll mention, a couple of things quickly I'll mention, like Fergus Green, it's going to be real tough for him. Like they just don't have a forward set up at all. Their best kind of way through forward was kind of Dylan Moore and Chad Wingard, and then Wingard went off injured, and I was shattered because I'm like, no, I need him to play more games because he's terrible. But they
I
don't.
was happy.
They don't actually have. They have no forward setup at all. The Hawks there, and they're just going to be like the Bombers half backs just had an absolute field day. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about Hawthorn. I'll get on to Essendon in a second, unless you guys.
No, what was Dylan Moore's CBA percentage?
I don't think he had any.
Doesn't matter, but he's
Oh,
CBAs.
73 Supercoach
73.
boys, not a top 10 forward. There you go.
Depends on Daisy Will. So, I mean, I did want to touch on this. So, Will Day only had 26%. He had a great AFL fantasy rating, I think 90, but only 60 Supercoach. I don't think he's an option personally, especially with that amount of CBAs. I just don't see it. He did have 8 marks on the day, though. So, I mean, he's obviously was able to get the ball around the ground, but just not an inside. Didn't have many contested possessions. I don't think he's a Supercoach worthy player, so I would skip hardcore on Will Day.
Yep, that's fine.
Agreed.
All right, Essendon.
Bombers.
Yes, very impressive from that 15-minute mark in the second quarter. Perkins played the best game I've seen him play. Yeah, he probably could have kicked 5 or 6 in that role. But there was more. The story was the halfbacks from Essendon. You know, Redmond, Ridley, even Zerk Thatcher got him on it. It was just the way they're setting up much better than what they had last year. So Scott's definitely got them back in the positions where their strengths are being used. Redmond's got that bit of that Jaden Short about him where they're happy for him to get up the ground and kick that ball from 55, 60, have that shot at goal. I couldn't believe Ridley even got up the ground and kicked the goal. That's how much like pressure Hawthorn were really putting on like there. But in saying that, they were looking for Ridley again, a bit like we were talking with Sicily when they were switching the ball, and we said Essendon through that slow transition to the half back before then they and then they worked their way through the midfield from there. And it was they were looking for Ridley every chance they get. So there'll be a lot of waxing between Redmond and Ridley this year, and Redmond could potentially be one that we're talking about who could be that sort of top 10th, 11th, 12th. He could be definitely up there, but I think both of them are going to be great options. Benny?
Well, Ridley definitely was, especially when Hawthorn weren't having the best, I guess, forward options. So if you come up against a really good side and the ball's in defensive 50 for the Bombers a lot more, I think Ridley will probably score even more. And he was on fire early, but it kind of fizzled out once the floor sort of went down on the CBAs going forward of Sender. It was a little bit harder for him to really dominate, which is where some of these other players kind of came in late in that game.
And that's the thing.
Definitely interested.
They dominated that game for the last 75 minutes, Essendon, and he was still good enough to score 107. That's
what I mean.
where
He's very rated.
That's exactly right. Now the Essendon midfield, Parrish went to work and did Parrish-like things, but that's the problem. That 37 touches for the 109, but he was up there with one of the better players. A lot of his touches on the ground.
I reckon he got 10 of those touches in the last 5 minutes of the game.
That was a slow
He was still
burn.
doing a lot of stuff in the midfield, and
he was I think that's why his Supercoach wasn't as high as it probably should have been.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's
his role
at the end.
Yeah, of course, but he still was. The more like the attacking midfielder. They're going to put work in the merit, but let's talk centre goat. So he was definitely lining up next to Newcomb in centre bounces. And he just stood out as that big bodied player. Like it's hard to not miss him.
19 disposals and 70 Supercoach, by the way.
Who? Newcomb. Newcomb. Yeah. So not only can he do this, like he shuts them down, but so that's where the 6 tackles come in. But it was the real impressive thing was the 10 marks. So they were actually probably from about halfway through the second quarter when the Bombers started winning, they were actually trying to hit Setterfield up through that midfield and half forward. So that's what I was most impressed about his role, because that's where the game really started to change. And they're like, oh, hang on, we've got this big midfielder there. Let's just kick it to him. And there was a lot of transition even from that half back where we're talking about the Bombers, slow ball movement, Redmond, McGrath, Zerk Thatcher all sort of chipping it around. And then Setterfield was the one to actually make a sort of lead about, let's say, 70 metres from the defensive goal. And they would hit him up. And then you'd see Merritt and Durham and those guys spread from there. And then Setterfield was actually kicking the ball really well, pick one of them out, and then the Bombers were off. And once the Bombers are off and they're a forward 50, you just can't stop them because they've always been a very good attacking team like that. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how that continues. But yeah, as the game kept going on, there was a lot more confidence of using Setterfield in that role. And yeah, I thought their forward line actually structured up better without Peter Wright there because they're kind of always looking for Peter Wright. But now with sort of Wiedemann and Jones and then a couple of the smalls, they actually had options. So and that's where, like your Setterfields, your Parishes, the wingmen actually were able to get into gaps. Draper caused them a few concerns with that too. So I thought their forward line was more dynamic without Peter Wright. So I think the next 3 or 4 weeks it's going to be very interesting to see if that continues.
Speaking of forwards, Davey Jr. Now, he kicked a goal, looked impressive enough, kicked one out in the full as well as his first opportunity, I think, at goal. But, 58 Supercoach points. He was low scoring for a lot of the game. And if you're going to score low as a small forward, I have concerns for him too, guys. Now, it's kind of like the long factor as well. Small forward, he might have a couple of good scores where this one he got 58. He might kick a couple of goals in a game and get you a 60 to 80. But he can also go missing. And small forwards, if the ball doesn't go their way, I mean, look at Charlie Cameron, one of the best small forwards in the comp. Scored horrible against Port Adelaide in a loss. So I'm very concerned with some of these small forwards where, it might be a correction trade on offer as well. Like, what do you think, Chris? Like, Davey?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we knew that going into the pick. Doesn't really matter. Him and Fergus Green were like, well, there really isn't anything else. Even Noah Long, like I've got Long in the midfield just to switch them around. Probably that changes. We'll have to see.
Wow, you have some issues.
Nah, not really. I mean, Long scored 63.
Ash,
Long.
This is what
I mean. I've got plenty that I want to fix. So I'm going to fix Chesser. I'm going to fix Ash, and I'll probably go Hopper out as well. So who knows? Just keep an eye on my YouTube video that's about to go up.
Yeah, for sure.
Mate, I think he's fine as that loophole guy, as you said. He's the best of those sort of options. But his biggest competition, like AJ Menzies, kind of plays very different to him as a small forward. And Tipper, came on. The moment was beautiful. He's come on. He's kicked a great goal. Crowd was up and about. Fantastic. But he was so out of puff after about 10 minutes on the field there, because he's such a spurt player. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if they kept going with that for the next couple of weeks and go, okay, Davey, you're the one that's actually going to be on ground, and we're just going to bring Tipper on sort of later in the game.
Yeah, I think small forwards is a pretty much big no for me. All the talk on like Andy McGrath coming off the back line, 75 Supercoach. So, hey, and he had good disposal efficiency. Bless him. Setterfield, I think, is one to watch. He started off on the bench.
It was important, but they just went through more Ridley and Redmond.
Yeah, it's fine. McGrath, that's fine. There's only one McGrath in
and
my
as
opinion.
I said, they were hitting up
cricket.
They hit up Setterfield more from that 70-meter zone.
Yeah, the nice tall up. It's the Dunkley factor. The
That's
tall player that can lead up. They never had that before.
Stood
They're
out
blessed
so much.
with his
he just
luxuries
absolutely
now.
stood out.
I was concerned watching this game to begin with because Setterfield was on the bench.
No, it was all part of the plan, mate.
Oh, good.
No, he came on. Chris, talk about the Setter goat, mate, because you sold me on him. How are you?
Yeah, so the only thing that's negative about his role at the moment was that he had 74% CBAs, I want to say. Yeah, 74, which is the second, actually. So Shield and Merritt had 68 and he had 74, with Parish having 84%. The only negative to that is that he didn't take advantage of his centre-back's tendencies. He got virtually no clearances. I just want to check on his, and he got 3 contested possessions for the day. So on a day where he one clearance for the day, 3 contested possessions. Yeah, that's not great, but he was obviously playing that negating role anyway, so he did his job there. What was impressive that obviously is spread from the contest and the way that he was able to collect the ball around the ground, irrespective of his bad day inside. But I see a game where he gets those clearances and he gets those contested possessions, and then he also does that, and he's going to go massive. He's going to get a 120 plus, and it's going to be awesome. And you're going to be on him. I love the GOAT, and that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, well,
6 tackles as well.
I'll
6 tackles, the most. No, 6 tackles.
I'll say about
The
that.
GOAT.
But his role in there was brilliant because he absolutely smoked Newcomb in the middle, in the guts.
Yeah.
And I think after a while,
who got tickets?
The Reeves and Meek were actually trying to hit the ball down to Ward and and Mackenzie and the other guys down there because Newcomb was and Worpel. So they were going more Worpel than trying to hit it to Newcomb. That. So
Alright.
they had the dominant ruckman, and that's probably the only issue there for the Bombers is they don't have Draper's not going to be a dominant ruckman, so they're going to lose quite a few of those hitouts in the midfield. But the good thing is Setterfield's lining up against the most dangerous midfielder. So the Bombers this week, off the top of my head, no, St Kilda's the fight, Gold Coast. So I would not be surprised if he goes and stands next to Took. So it'd be very interesting which is going to dominate, Draper and Phillips. I wouldn't be surprised if which goes 50 hitouts again. So does that, like last week, where the opposition team tried to set up to shark them, if Witts is hitting down to Took, I think that brings Miller more into the game. I mean, Setterfield more into the game.